everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Juan Londoño. Today we have a super interesting topic for photographers who feel like their photography is just boring. Let's get into it. Some of the things we're going to talk about today are mental. And it's about really a mindset, right? Adapting a different mindset. And others are going to be technical, which involve cameras, lenses, and different things like this. So let's look at all these possibilities and let's see what they might be. One of the reasons we talked about recently in a previous video, if you go to the description down below, I'm going to link that video. And what it's going to talk about is a loss of love for life. And it's not as dramatic as it seems, but think about it this way. If we are photographers and we are simply just not in love with life, everything around us seems boring and lame and plain and simple and just blah, I've had enough of this, then what makes us think that we're going to want to grab a camera and photograph these things that we just think are simply boring? For me to grab my camera and head out every day, whether it's just putting it in my car hoping that I get something nice that day, or going to a specific, photo shoot, right? Whether it's a paid shoot or a fun shoot, what makes me grab that camera and leave the house with enthusiasm is many things we're going to talk about here. But one of them is being in love with life, right? Wanting to capture things that I feel are beautiful. If I go to the gardens, I can't wait to take my camera and photograph the flowers. But if the flowers seem, more flowers, more trees, more cityscapes, how much of this can I do? Then there's really no reason to pick up a camera and shoot. So that's one of the main ones. We're not going to go into too much detail here, more than that. There's a whole video dedicated to that. Number two is bad gear. Now, as photographers, one of the things we do is we justify buying new cameras, right? My camera is not as good as it used to be. My camera doesn't do what the cameras today do. My camera doesn't have... Well, so there's, some of that is just us wanting a new camera, and that's called GAS, Gear Acquisition Syndrome. I have it, right? I'm not going to tell you I don't. But there's a certain truth to it as well, if we're honest with ourselves. And that is that, for example, if the type of photography I love doing or that I'm getting paid to do requires capturing really fast action, then I need a good autofocus. And if I have a camera that's 12, 13 years old, maybe if it's even a DSLR, it just doesn't cut it compared to photographers that are doing this and they have quick mirrorless cameras with eye autofocus and car autofocus and motorcycle autofocus and all these really cool features. So that's a real thing. If you need a camera to do your job well, even if it's a passion, you like to photograph Formula One races around the world, and you travel to see them and to get good pictures, right? And you pay extra to be in the I was going to say cockpit, down in the, I forgot the name anyway, where the cars are, right? Like the garages. It has a name. Fire pit? Oh my gosh. Put it down below, because I can't remember right now. I know by the time this video is over, I'll remember. So anyway, people pay extra for that. And if your camera doesn't cut it, then you're not going to be able to get the pictures you want, right? So bad gear is a real thing, and that could be one of the reasons that your pictures are lame. But be honest with yourself. Is it just that, and we're going to go into one of those categories, I don't want to mention it, right? Is it that you really need a new camera with new features, or is it that you're just finding an excuse, which we'll mention, to buy a new camera? That's number two. Number three, we need to change something. So we get mundane in our life, and we do things that we're comfortable doing, right? The gardens for me are 45 minutes away from here, and I have a year pass, and it's just convenient for me. If it's Saturday, my family says, hey, we're going to go, spend mother-daughter time together, and they leave me, right? There's always stuff to do at home, but sometimes I just want a mental break. And the quickest thing for me to do is head to the gardens, 45 minutes, and I can spend 2 or 3 hours easily walking around shooting beautiful, beautiful pictures of flowers and insects and even squirrels and little things like that, right? But if I do that over and over and over and over, it's going to become mundane and boring, right? So sometimes we just need to change the location. Sometimes, not always, we need to change lenses. One of the things that happens is many of us marry into a lens, right? It could be, for example, the equivalent of a 24-70. And it could be a 2.8. So beautiful lens, and we use it for everything. And it never comes off our camera. But what happens is over years, our pictures, our photographs look the same. They're restricted to a 24 to 70 millimeter range. And that's it. That's what you're going to be looking at. You're not going to be looking at anything wider ever, and you're not going to be looking at anything more close-up ever, right? Unless you carry lenses around and you know how to adapt and you're not lazy to adapt. I carry 2 or 3 lenses around typically, even when I go to the gardens, right? And I have no problem getting on my knees, switching out lenses, taking 2 or 3 pictures, right? Walking around with that lens because, you know, you may as well keep it on there. Why change it if you may see something else? And then if, 5-10 minutes go by and I haven't needed it again and I'm needing something wide, then I go back to what I had before, right? The point is, don't be afraid if you have multiple lenses, don't be afraid to carry them. Don't be afraid, don't be lazy to switch them out, right? Sometimes it's important. If you have one prime, I've talked about this, having an exercise where you put one prime on your camera and you go shoot it for like a month so you get familiar with that focal range. But if you've been shooting that prime for 10 years, it's probably time to switch things up a little bit. Some people like the 35 millimeter equivalent. How about a 24 millimeter equivalent? Push yourself a little bit. Get a little more, right? Get a little less. So lenses, very important that we switch those up a little. One of the other ones is color in black and white. Many people are very comfortable shooting black and white. They learn to think in black and white. So they see a picture and they know that it's going to look good in black and white. There are videos that we're going to do specifically, and they're coming up because I've already written down the topics on how to think in black and white, right? Many people have gotten to that point. And so they're so comfortable, they shoot mainly in black and white. Now, there are other reasons for shooting in black and white. Many of the museums, galleries, when you're going to do an exhibit, they take black and white photography a little more serious than color, right? For whatever reason. We're not going to go into those details here, but if you talk to many curators and people who own galleries and people who exhibit often, they'll tell you that, these galleries prefer black and white. It gives photography kind of a feel of an artistic feel, right? But if you've been shooting black and white for 5-10 years, it's nice to switch it up a little bit, right? Not every picture you take has to be with the mindset that maybe I'll exhibit this one day, maybe I'll sell it. Go out for fun one day and just shoot in color, right? So many people buy monochrome cameras, which only shoot in black and white. Many people will set their camera to black and white. But remember, if you're shooting in RAW, it'll show you black and white on your screen, but when you get it on your computer, all of that information has been saved. So you actually have the color image, okay? So you can shoot RAW and JPEG, so it'll save the color images for you, but the JPEGs will be in black and white. There's a lot of different things we can do. My point here is, if you've been shooting color always, switch it up to black and white sometimes, right? And learn to think in black and white. Learn to see beauty in black and white. It's a different type of beauty. We're going to talk about that in the other video. But for now, just keep in mind, black and white, color, switch them up. And last but not least of these big topics, there's always other things to talk about. We can talk about endless tripods and all kind of gadgets. But the last one we'll focus on is cameras. Back to GAS, gear acquisition syndrome, right? One of the reasons for needing a new camera is, we mentioned, functionality, right? It's not giving you what you need, and my screen just turned off. It's not giving you what you need, so you really need to go out and buy a camera. It might even be damaged, right? Some of the features might not work. One of my friends has a camera and the autofocus doesn't work on the camera. So he doesn't care because he uses mostly manual focus, but if you're going to start shooting fast action stuff, you might want a camera that has good autofocus, right? So sometimes there's a need. Other times, it's just what you're holding in your hand has to touch your heart. And I'm touching my mic over here. First time I used this thing, so I apologize. it has to move you, right? I have a DSLR and I love my DSLR. And many of the new mirrorless, big, full frame, fast cameras like the Canon R3 looks like this, right? This is the size of the beast. It has a very specific purpose, that camera, the R3. Just like, let me give you an example. Sony just is releasing a camera in 2025. I don't know when you're watching this video. It's going to be a 16 megapixel camera. You're saying, what? Cameras are up to 50. Sony has a 61 megapixel camera. What are they doing with a 16 megapixel camera? Well, because every pixel is bigger, it can capture more light. So 16 megapixels, I always say that picture on the wall behind me in the office, right? It's a woman running on a railroad track. That was taken with my 6 megapixel Canon 10D. And that's a 24 by 36. And I have a 40 by 60 of that picture, inches, okay? Very big photograph. So when people tell me, you know, I can't really make big images with my 16 megapixel sensor, so I'm moving to a 24 or a 40 megapixel sensor, blah, 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 blah. Goes in one ear, out the other. I just say, yes, okay, sure. I know the truth because I have it behind me, right? So Sony's coming up with a 16 megapixel camera because they are making this camera for people that shoot weddings, because they know that most people that shoot weddings have 8 by 10s, maybe a 16 by 20, and if they need a 24 by 36, like behind me, all you need is 6 megapixels. So you have 10 extra megapixels to play with. So the reason for this camera is 400,000 ISO. They're putting all of their ISO technology into this camera, right? The latest and greatest science in you know, capturing clean, low light photography, and 16 megapixels. So the pixels are really big, so they're going to be able to capture a ton of light. You're going to be able to take pictures with this camera in basically low lit rooms, and they're going to come out beautiful. So every camera has a specific reason. That's why no camera is perfect for anybody, because some cameras will lack some things, some will have things that we don't use, right? But the point here is, I take this camera with me and it does a job very well, right? Very specific jobs, it does very well. But it doesn't move me. Like, I look at this thing sitting on the table and there's nothing that says, ooh, pick me up, I want to go take pictures. It does nothing for me. It does an amazing job. There are Nikons like this, there are Sonys like this that are big plastic monsters that do phenomenal work, right? And the inside they're metal, the outside is all plastic and rubber. They just feel like every other camera in the world. They do nothing for my heart, for my soul, right? This little thing, right? This little thing, look at the size difference here, by the way. Just look at this for a second. I'm gonna put these side by side. Uh-oh, I got company coming. Look at this, right? What a big difference that is. So hold that thought. So as I was saying before the slight interruption, apologize for that, is that, so, you know, you've got to, especially for fun stuff, right? You've got to be able to pick up a camera with some kind of desire, right? And even though this is a beautiful camera, and I have another big camera that's very much suited for high resolution images and stuff like that, these are not the cameras that I see on a table and go, oh, I can't wait to go shoot this, right? Or I'm leaving with my family somewhere to a picnic or to the lake. I don't think of these big cameras and go, oh, I can't wait to get good pictures with these, because they're cumbersome, they're too big, they're heavy, they get in the way, right? Not only that, but they're ugly. So when you look at something like this, right, this has personality, right? This has a little more character. I'm trying to get it focused here. And this is an older Canon M6 Mark II. The Fujis are even nicer because they have all the buttons on the top, like the old film cameras. I can take this off, so it becomes even smaller. And I couldn't find my small lenses. I don't know where they went. I have a couple of pancake lenses for this camera, and this becomes pocketable. I could put it in my cargo pants, right? So when you look at this and you look at this, these are two very, very different animals, right? You see the difference? And when this is sitting on a table, and it's such a pretty and easy to use camera, right? And with the small lens, equivalent of a 35 millimeter, it's a pancake lens. It's half the size of this thing. When I have that, when it's sitting around, I want to take it with me. Like, I don't want to leave the camera. And I have a really nice strap for it, which I click onto these Peak Design little things. You know, there's got to be some of that. So camera makes a big difference. It's got to be a camera. That's why so many people are switching now to, or at least buying an extra Fuji, because they have, the lens has the aperture, right, ring. There's shutter speed and ISO, and then there's a exposure compensation. All the dials. You never have to go into a menu, right? And there's a lot to be said about that. You can go have a lot of fun. If you want to put it in automatic, you can, but photographers don't usually do that. They'll keep it in manual, and then everything's at your fingertips, right? So camera, very important. And a quick analogy, right? I don't want to wear the same shoes every day. Some people are comfortable with that. And that mindset is okay for some. It's not okay for me, right? Sometimes I'm wearing jeans, I want one type of shoes. Sometimes I'm wearing slacks. I mean, obviously, if you're wearing slacks and you're going somewhere nicer, you have a different pair of shoes, right? I'm going to the gym, I have a different pair of shoes. And cameras are the same way. I take my phone with me everywhere because it's always with me. So if I need to take a picture, I take it with my phone if I have nothing else. But if I'm carrying this little thing, or any camera for that matter, I'm going to use that over my phone 100% of the time. And that's why I carry these little cameras with me, whether it's this one, the Canon, or the Fuji, because they're easy to carry, they're easy to use, and they take much better pictures than any phone that's out there. Can you take nice pictures with phones? Of course you can. There are people that have Instagram channels only with their cell phone, and the pictures are beautiful. You can't enlarge them. You can't do anything, really, really big with them. So, not my choice. If it is for you, I keep touching this mic. If it is for you, fantastic, right? But back to the shoes. If you're one of those mindsets that, one of these things for your professional use and then for everything else is fine, then you have nothing to worry about. That's not me. I like to have different cameras for different things. That's my serious camera for, what it does right. This is my street photography camera, my lake camera, my walk around, the city with this thing on my side. It doesn't weigh anything, right? I can keep an extra lens in my cargo pants. That's it. That's all I need. So cameras. Number 4 is limited capabilities. And I'm talking about me, not the camera, because we already discussed camera, right? Some people know so little about photography that their camera's always in autofocus. As a matter of fact, I've talked about this before. I went to a wedding once. I was a guest in a wedding, and I saw the photographer, and I went up to them. I didn't tell them that I did photography. And I said, hey, can I look at your camera? And, oh, sure, no problem. And I really wanted just to see the settings. I already knew what camera it was. And I look at the settings, and the camera was in automatic, shooting a wedding. Now, many of you might justify that and say, well, Juan, I don't want to be thinking. It's a wedding. I don't want to miss anything, right? Yeah. I mean, a photographer puts that camera in manual and is not going to miss anything because you still have autofocus, right? Even back in the manual focus days, you missed very little. So, I don't know, but some people still use autofocus, and when you do that, you're limiting yourself, right? The camera's making all the decisions for you. ISO, shutter speed, aperture, everything. So, you're very limited, and your pictures are going to start looking like they come out of a phone, and it's going to start looking boring. Depth of field. Some people love a particular depth of field, like they use their lenses wide open all the time, so you never really see what's behind the subject. The subject can be a flower, and then everything else behind it is blurred. The subject can be a person, and everything behind it, the city, wherever they're at, is blurred. The pictures look very pretty for portraits, but when you're trying to do an environmental portrait where you're trying to show where this person is and a little bit of the dynamic about this environment, then you're losing out, right? So likewise the other way, if you're always closing your lens down and everything is always sharp, then your pictures over a period of time start to look the same over and over and over. And when you look at another photographer and you see that blurry depth of field in the background, in the foreground, you go, oh, I wish my pictures looked like that. Well, we can all make our pictures look like that. The point here is vary your technique. Use different apertures for different things. When I'm in a city, most of the time, I shoot at f8 or f11 because I want everything focused. But there are times where I want a particular person singled out and I want the stuff in the background, it's a little too noisy. I want all that stuff blurred out. I'll go down to f4 or f2.8 if I have that ability, right? So keep that in mind. Poor lighting management is another one that'll make your pictures look terrible over a period of time, where you're just like wondering, like, why do my pictures look so lame and so blah? Why can't I get over, I have a good lens, I understand photography. If we don't understand lighting, we're always going to be limited by mediocre pictures, because it's not just lighting like the stuff I have around me for this video, it's using natural lighting. If the sun is too strong on one side and you're getting too much shadow, stand the person next to a white wall, or stand them next to a car or a truck or something where you don't see the vehicle, but you get a reflection. Now you get light on the other side, right? You see where I'm going with this, right? Learn to use light, use backlight, right? Put that sun behind them, over them, so it lights their hair and gives them a highlight. There's so many things we can do with light, right? So if we don't know how to use light, our pictures will be limited again and start to look boring over a period of time. Wrong lenses, kind of the stuff we talked about before with depth of field, right? That's setting the lens, but wrong lenses too. Many people will hear a friend say, this is such a good lens, I don't take it off my camera, it's with me all the time, and they buy it. And they'll spend $1,500 on a lens. Nothing wrong with that if you have the money, but they don't know how to use the lens. They don't know how to get the most out of that lens. So they put that lens in one aperture, they put it in the other, they don't know how to compensate with the other settings on their camera, and they just can't get it to work right. And they wonder why it is that their friend gets the nicest pictures in the world and they can't get good pictures. That goes back to limited capabilities of ourselves, right? But here it's specific. It's not knowing how to use lenses. When I teach my class, we have a whole day, which is, an hour, where we talk about all the numbers on a lens, what the f-stop means, right? What the focal length means, what's the difference between zoom and telephoto, macro, wide angle, standard lens, right? All that stuff, and I quiz them over and over, even in the classes that follow. I'll ask them, what type of lens is this? Because it is so important. You have no idea how many people I talk to that have decent cameras and decent lenses and don't understand the topic. And they'll call me, oh, that was my water bottle. I'm going to do a video, excuse me for a second. I want to do a video on these. This is fantastic. The brand doesn't matter. There are different brands. This is a hydrogen water bottle. It adds hydrogen into your water. Listen to this. I'll put it over here. You see that? So there's hydrogen in this water, and it's supposed to be ultra healthy. I'm going to do this because I walk around, hot cities and places and mountains, and this is a wonderful way to stay hydrated and hydrogenated, right? I got confused there. So, doesn't change the flavor, super healthy. I'm gonna do a video on hydrogen water for photographers, just because this is so convenient to stick in a little backpack, and then you can carry some extra water to put in there. You have to push a button and it hydrogenates your water for you. It takes about 10 minutes. So keep subscribe, and that video is coming within the next couple of weeks. I'm going to do that because I already own the bottle. So video, I already started it actually. I just have to finish it up. So back to the topic. So as I was saying, photographers with decent equipment, and they'll call me and say, hey, I have these two lenses, and what do you think? I have a little money to spend. What do you think I should buy next? I'm like, well, it depends on so many things, right? What are you doing with the two lenses you have? What type of photography are you shooting? What do you like to shoot, right? How do you like your depth of field? How much low light situations do you find yourself in? There are so many questions I have to ask. And at the end, I'll recommend, one or two lenses, and many times, they won't even buy them, because the truth is we all already kind of know what we want. We just want somebody to justify it for us. And if I give them a different answer, they're going to end up just looking for somebody else that will justify the purchase they want to make. So keep that in mind. But lenses, very important. We need to know what to do with our lenses and what lenses to buy. And then poor composition. This is all part of number 4, which was limited capabilities. Poor composition, which is all the part of the knowledge, not understanding photography, not understanding the technicals of your camera, right? If we're always shooting like with our subject in the center, if we're infatuated by leading lines and that's all we use, if we're infatuated by patterns and there has to be some type of pattern in the picture, yes, we develop a style, that's kind of cool, But over an extended period of time, pictures are going to start to look boring. So switch it up. That's all I'm saying. Number 5 is very little patience. Now, working in IT and working in the professional world, I see a lot of the younger people coming into the workforce displaying this lack of patience. What I mean by that is they've been working for 6 months to a year, and if there is no notice of some kind of a promotion, they start to look for the door, right? And I understand that, right? There is something to be said about if your career is not moving, do something about it, right? But 6 months, right? I've worked with people that 6 months in, hey, this is going nowhere, I'm looking for a job. I'm like, hey, why don't you give it a chance, right? You haven't even learned the application completely yet. Give your boss a chance to really understand you and see what you're bringing to the table, and your promotion will come, right? And bring it up, right? So it doesn't fall by the wayside. So this lack of patience is important in many, many fields, and it's important in photography. And how does it work in photography? Well, many times people will follow others on Instagram, on Vero, they watch YouTube videos, and they want their pictures to look a specific way, right? When I shot flowers many, many years ago, I was happy with what I was getting, but I knew I could do so much better. I was looking at the work other people were doing, and I could see that something was missing. The way I looked at flowers was different from how they looked at flowers, through the camera, I mean, right? And there was something I needed to learn about my settings. And over time, I started experimenting with light, different times of the day, different lenses, different cameras, different angles, right? The light behind the flower, the light in front of the flower, the light over the flower, lighting the flower, wetting the flower, all these different things. And I started to get different results. And I've become decent at shooting flowers, but it's taken years, right? And this is something I do on the side for fun, and it's taken years because I'm not dedicating 8 hours a day to it. We have to be patient as photographers. You want to learn to use lights? Be patient. Buy yourself some inexpensive lights, play with them for a year or two, right? And if you have that time, right? If you're doing this because you're trying to ramp up to do weddings, then you're going to have to go faster, right? You're going to have to take a course. You're going to have to buy some decent lights right off the bat. You're going to have to learn to use them well. But even that's going to take a little time. And you're probably going to botch a few things up in your first weddings before you really, really get it. So my point is, be patient. If your pictures look lame, boring, whatever, the 5th point that I'm trying to make is be patient. Sometimes they do look boring because they are boring. And we're improving, and eventually they won't look boring. This, number 6, is a little bit of what we just talked about, and it's comparing ourselves to others. I talked about how we, follow different people, and the previous point was just not having patience, right? This one is just comparing ourselves to so many different people that we see different styles, and I look at one photographer and, oh my gosh, I wish I could shoot like that. I look at another photographer, oh, I wish I could shoot like that. And I look at a third photographer, oh, I wish I could shoot like that. Well, Mr. 3 is shooting fashion, and I don't even shoot fashion anymore, right? So yes, I wish I could shoot like that, but I don't shoot enough models to do that. Number 2 is shooting flowers, and I live in a big city. I don't have access to many flowers. So, yes, I wish I could shoot like that, but what am I doing, right? And then number 1 is shooting whales off of ships, and I don't go on many cruises, so yes, I wish I could shoot like that, so we have to be realistic, right? When we compare ourselves to people, because we want to learn, not compare ourselves to people to demean ourselves or make somebody else seem stupid, but when we're comparing ourselves to people because we're trying to pick something up, we should focus on things that we're either going to get into or things that we're doing already, right? If I'm trying to become a better flower photographer, I'm going to follow 5 to 10 flower photographers. I'm going to look at their styles, their lighting. If they post their settings, I'm going to look at that. I'm going to go try it. And over a period of time, I can guarantee you I'm going to improve. But if I'm trying to shoot better flower photography and I'm following a dude or a ma'am, a dudette, that shoots nothing but architecture, and I'm in love with their architecture photography, but I never leave my hometown, yeah, I wish I could shoot like that, but I'm not doing anything about it, right? So be careful when you're following somebody and you're comparing yourself. don't beat yourself up if it's not the type of photography you're doing, right? Focus on what you're doing, follow a few people that are, and then, improve along those lines, right? And after a couple of years, you can notice that you're growing, you're improving, and you can say, I've made some strides. Pat yourself on the back and see what else you can do. Last but not least is number 7, and it's predetermining how our photos should look. This is dangerous, right? Let me give you an example, and you're going to see one right here. Say I've never been to New York City, right? I was raised there and I go all the time, and those of you that follow me see pictures all the time of New York City. But say that I never have been to New York City, and I'm taking a trip to New York City. And I've seen pictures of the Empire State, right? Beautiful pictures of the Empire State everywhere. I know what it looks like. I'm in love with this building. I want to go take a picture of it. And on my way to the Empire State, I'm walking the city streets. I come across a picture like this. Now, if your mind is open and you're thinking about all the beautiful things you can do with your camera, you're going to take a picture like this and you're going to go, oh my gosh, I am so lucky I came across this view of the Empire State. But if your mind is thinking about what you've seen in the manuals and the brochures and the catalogs and other people take, right? Then you're going to walk by something like this and you're not even going to see it, right? It's not going to look interesting, and it's not going to look anything like the Empire State. What I did when I took that picture of the Empire State, on my way to the Empire State, actually, was I on my way to the Empire State? No, I was just walking the city. And I would turn around every once in a while and I would get a really cool picture of it, right? Open, just like everybody else does. But I started looking for reflections too, right? And I came across this one. So I get to exercise 3 different things when I took this picture, as opposed to just looking back and taking a picture of the Empire State. Reflection, right? The art of using reflection is beautiful, right? So I got to use reflection. I got to use distortion because it wasn't a clean, simple piece of glass. It was a glass with, metal rods through it. So I introduced distortion and I introduced patterns with the different lines going, vertical and horizontal. So 3 different concepts into the picture of the Empire State. And it ends up looking like a much more interesting picture. To me anyway, maybe not to everybody. The danger in walking into a scene or walking somewhere to a scene, right, with a predetermined notion of what your picture should look like is that you're not going to be happy, even taking that picture, right, of the Empire State. If the lighting isn't right that day, you're not going to be happy with what you take. And what you take might be beautiful. It might just be different lighting, but you saw 3 or 4 pictures online, and the person that took them might live in New York and may have taken 40 different pictures on 40 different days, picked the one that was most beautiful and posted it. And you're walking into New York City thinking you're going to get a picture just like that on a random day that might be cloudy, might be too sunny, might be whatever, right? And you're going to get a beautiful picture probably, but it's not going to look like that person's picture, and you're going to beat yourself up because you didn't get the picture that you should have gotten, right? Don't do that. That's what I mean by walking into a place thinking already of what your picture should look like. That's very dangerous. We're going to do a whole video just on that. And the other one is that you're going to refrain, as I said, from taking other pictures of the Empire State, whether it's through reflections, right, in windows and glass and doors, and through different gates and fences. There are so many things that you can do, right? With things in the foreground, maybe an airplane in the background. You're going to refrain from all these things because they don't look like the pictures you've been looking at. So be careful with that. Don't clear your mind. Look at the subject. Say, ooh, Empire State. Let's see what I can do with the Empire State. I'm going to New York City and I'm going to see how many different ways I can grab this building in my camera. With people, without people, with reflections, through gates, reflecting off car windows and windshields, and be creative, right? Be creative. That's what we're here for. That's why we buy these things, so we can grab not just what we're seeing, but we can get creative with what we're capturing, all right? So in summary, we've reached the end here. Before I go on, go into the description. Make sure you check out my Instagram channel, right? Like and subscribe if you get a chance. So you can see the videos coming up that I'm going to do of the water bottle. I got some gear that I've recorded the initial parts of the reviews. I just have to finish them off. So like and subscribe. And the other one is buy me a coffee if you get a chance. There will be a link in the description to buy me a coffee, and that's just going to allow me to get little things that I can do reviews on for you, right? So, or even rent equipment that I can do reviews on. So, I hope that you've found some of this information useful. Ask yourself, if your pictures are starting to look a little boring, lame, whatever word you want to use, plain, mundane, right, monotonous, go through this video and ask yourself, do any of these things apply to me? And if not, close your eyes for a minute, try to find out what is it, maybe something I didn't even note here, and please share it with us in the comments, because then we can all learn from that as well, because I'm sure there are other things that I didn't talk about. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, as always. This is a Saturday afternoon. It's beautiful here. As you can see, there's light coming through every window in the house. I hope that you are safe. I hope you're having a great weekend. And if you watch this during a weekday, I hope that you're having a great week. So, love you guys. Stay tuned for the next video coming up. And I'll share some pictures here, some others of reflections, just a few. And I'll see you in the next video. Ciao for now. Pero yo lo jalo. Un tendón, uno lo estira, entonces ya cuando uno lo relaja, ya tiene más estiramiento porque uno lo estira. Es como una cuerda de la guitarra. Yo agarro la cuerda y la estiro, la cuerda es así. Yo la agarro y la estiro.
Oh my gosh.
Y después la suelto, queda más estirada, Entonces, eso es aquí, lo empujo, lo empujo para adentro.
Why do I look like that?
Y después lo suelto. Ya hay luces. Sí, ahí mismo descanso.
Con presas de agua caliente.
¿Quieres que te grabe?
That's
Sí.
good. Why do I look like that?